By the time the office emptied that afternoon, most people had already decided what kind of man he was. A single father who arrived late, a worker who asked for exceptions, someone easy to correct in front of others. The manager's voice had carried farther than intended. Not loud, just firm enough to be heard, firm enough to settle something in the room. No one intervened. No one needed to. He stood there with his badge still clipped to his belt, his phone buzzing once in his pocket, then stopping. He didn't check it. He already knew it would matter later. What happened next wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but within hours, something irreversible would move into place, not because of anger, but because of a choice made too late to undo. If this story holds your attention, stay with it. Some changes only reveal themselves when no one is watching. The office was quieter than it had been all day. Not empty yet, but thinning. Chairs rolled back into place. Monitors went dark one by one. Someone laughed near the elevators, the sound brief and contained, like it had been practiced. He stayed at his desk longer than usual, not because there was more work to do, but because leaving too quickly would feel noticed. He closed one tab, then another. Saved a file he had already saved earlier. The movements were small and exact. The badge clipped to his belt pulled slightly when he leaned forward. He adjusted it without looking down. Across the floor, a few desks remained occupied. No one spoke to him. They didn't avoid him either. They just stayed where they were. The kind of distance that doesn't require effort. The manager had already left. That was clear. The office carried a different weight when she wasn't there. Less watchful, less arranged. The air moved again. Earlier, her voice had cut through the room. Not sharp, not raised, just placed carefully enough that it reached beyond him. She had stood beside his desk, tablet in hand, posture straight. She hadn't looked at the others, but she hadn't needed to. She spoke about expectations, about consistency, about how responsibility worked when you were part of a team. He had listened. He always did. He hadn't explained why he'd been late. He hadn't mentioned the school nurse or the bus that never came, or the way his son had asked the same question 3 times while pulling on one shoe. None of that fit into the shape of the conversation she was having. He had nodded once, said he understood. That was enough. Now, hours later, the moment still sat in the room, not replaying, just present, like a chair that hadn't been pushed back in. His phone buzzed in his pocket. One short vibration, then nothing. He didn't reach for it. He shut down his computer and slid his chair in. The sound was louder than he expected. He paused, then stood, adjusted his jacket, smoothed the front where it folded when he sat. As he walked toward the printer, he passed the glass-walled conference room. Inside, the table was clear. Chairs pushed in neatly. Someone had erased the whiteboard but left faint outlines behind. Words that had been important earlier, now reduced to smudges. He stopped at the printer and picked up a single page. He didn't need it right away. It could wait until morning. He folded it anyway once, carefully, and placed it in his bag. The elevator light blinked on at the end of the hall. He didn't hurry. When he reached the doors, they were already closing. He pressed the button, and they opened again without complaint. Inside, a woman from another department stood with her arms crossed loosely, eyes on the numbers above the door. She nodded once. He nodded back. The elevator descended slowly. The numbers changed. Neither of them spoke. At the lobby, she stepped out first. He followed a few seconds later. The security desk was half lit. The guard leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone. "Evening," the guard said, not looking up. "Evening," he replied. Outside, the light had shifted. The sun was lower now, reflecting off the windows across the street. He stood for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. The city moved around him in predictable patterns. Traffic paused, then resumed. A bus pulled away from the curb, empty seats visible through the windows. His phone buzzed again. This time, twice. He took it out. 2 missed calls. 1 voicemail. The name on the screen was familiar. The number was saved. He didn't listen to the message yet. He locked the phone and slid it back into his pocket. He started walking toward the train station. His steps matched the pace of the sidewalk. He kept his shoulders level, his gaze forward. The office building reflected him back as he passed, smaller than he expected, moving without pause. Behind him, the automatic doors closed. The decision that would matter hadn't been made yet, not fully. But something had already shifted, not inside him, around him, the kind of change that doesn't announce itself, the kind you only notice after it has begun. He reached the corner and waited for the light to change. When it did, he crossed. The apartment was quiet when he unlocked the door, not silent, but settled. The kind of quiet that came from routines holding their shape. He stepped inside and locked the door behind him, set his bag down by the wall, kicked his shoes off and lined them beside the others, 2 pairs his size, one much smaller, scuffed at the toes. From the kitchen came the sound of a cartoon playing at low volume. He loosened his jacket as he walked in. His son sat cross-legged on the floor, back against the couch, eyes fixed on the screen. A bowl of cereal rested beside him, spoon abandoned halfway through. He didn't turn right away. "I'm home," the father said. The boy raised one hand without looking back. "Okay." The father went to the sink and rinsed his hands. The faucet squeaked when he turned it off. He made a note to fix it this weekend, even though he already knew he wouldn't. He glanced at the clock on the microwave. Later than usual, still within reason. "How was school?" he asked. "Fine," the boy said. Then, after a moment, "We had math." "Good math or bad math?" The boy shrugged. "Just math." The father nodded, as if that explained everything. He opened the fridge and looked inside. Milk, half full. Leftover pasta in a plastic container. A single apple in the drawer. He closed it again and leaned against the counter. "You finish your cereal?" he asked. "Almost." The boy took another bite, slower this time. The cartoon characters argued quietly on the screen. The father watched for a moment, then turned it down another notch. The boy didn't complain. After dinner, they worked through homework at the small table near the window. The father sat across from him, elbows resting on the surface, hands folded loosely. He corrected mistakes without comment, pointed where to erase, where to try again. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. A bus passed, its reflections sliding across the glass. When the homework was done, the boy gathered his pencils and put them back in the cup. He did it carefully, like it mattered. "Tomorrow's library day," he said. "I know," the father replied. "Your book's already in your bag." The boy nodded. He stood and stretched, arms raised, shirt riding up slightly. He pulled it back down without being told. At bedtime, the routine stayed the same. Pajamas folded at the end of the bed. Teeth brushed. A story read from the same book they'd been working through for weeks. The father's voice stayed even. He didn't rush. Halfway through the second chapter, the boy's eyes closed. The father finished the page anyway, then stopped. He placed the bookmark where it always went and closed the book softly. He stood there for a moment, watching his son breathe. The room smelled faintly of laundry detergent and toothpaste. He turned off the lamp and pulled the door mostly shut. In the living room, he picked up his phone. The missed calls were still there. He listened to the voicemail this time. The voice on the other end was professional, calm. There was an issue with the afternoon pickup. A delay. Everything was resolved, but they wanted to follow up in the morning. Nothing urgent. He deleted the message and set the phone face down on the table. Later, when he lay in bed, he didn't sleep right away. He stared at the ceiling, counting the faint cracks above him. He didn't think about the office directly. He thought about schedules, about timing, about how much space there was for error before something broke. The alarm went off at the same time it always did. In the morning, he moved through the apartment quietly, packed lunch, checked the weather, woke his son with a light touch on the shoulder. "Time," he said. The boy groaned but sat up. He dressed without help, ate quickly, put on his jacket. They left the apartment together, locked the door, took the stairs. Outside, the air was cool. The bus stop was already crowded. They waited at the curb, backpacks resting against their legs. The bus came late. Not by much, just enough. When it arrived, the doors opened with a hiss. The boy climbed on first, turned back once. "Don't forget," he said. "Library day." "I won't," the father replied. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. The father checked his watch, calculated the rest of the morning, adjusted the margin in his head. He started walking faster. At work, the lights were already on. He scanned his badge at the entrance and stepped inside. The day had begun. The floor was already active when he reached his desk. Chairs were pulled out. Jackets hung on the backs of seats. Someone poured coffee at the far end, the smell drifting faintly through the air. He logged in and checked his email. No messages marked urgent. No follow-ups from the day before. That in itself felt deliberate. The manager arrived at 9 sharp. She walked quickly, not hurried, her tablet tucked under one arm. She nodded at a few people as she passed, already mid-thought, already arranging the day in her head. She didn't look at him. The morning meeting started on time. Everyone stood around the long table, some leaning against it, others perched on chairs. The manager stood at the head, tablet resting flat now, fingers moving as she scrolled. She talked about targets, about consistency across teams, about how small lapses created larger problems down the line. Her voice was level, practiced. The kind of voice that didn't invite interruption. He listened, eyes on the table, hands folded loosely in front of him. When the meeting ended, people dispersed in pairs and singles. A few comments were exchanged quietly. Someone laughed. Someone else checked their phone before sitting down. He returned to his desk and opened the file he'd been working on the day before. The numbers were familiar. He picked up where he'd left off, adjusting a column, double-checking totals. Around mid-morning, the manager stopped by another desk nearby. She leaned slightly forward, pointing at a screen. Her voice stayed low. The conversation didn't travel. When she reached his desk, she didn't sit. She stood beside him, angled just enough that others could see she was there. "I need to talk to you for a minute," she said. He turned his chair slightly to face her. "Okay." She gestured toward his screen. "Your report from yesterday. There's a delay noted." "Yes," he said. "I sent an update explaining." She raised one hand, not sharply, just enough to pause him. "We can talk about reasons later," she said. "Right now, I want to address the pattern." A few heads nearby lifted, then lowered again. She spoke about arrival times, about how expectations applied evenly, about how explanations, while understandable, didn't change impact. He nodded once. "I understand," he said. She watched him for a moment, then continued. "I need you to be more reliable. That means planning ahead." "Yes," he said again. She made a note on her tablet. The sound of the tap was distinct. "This is informal," she added. "For now." She moved on. The interaction lasted less than 2 minutes. No one said anything after. The office returned to its previous rhythm, but something had shifted in how space was used. Conversations stayed shorter. Movements became more careful. He stayed at his desk and worked. He didn't look around to see who had noticed. He didn't need to. At lunch, he ate at his desk, unwrapped the sandwich he'd packed that morning, took measured bites while reading through a document. He drank water instead of coffee. Across the room, someone mentioned a deadline. Another person responded. The exchange was ordinary. In the afternoon, an email came through, a reminder about attendance policies. Sent to the entire team, he read it once, then closed it. He finished his tasks early and reviewed them again, slower this time. Checked for errors that wouldn't have mattered before. At 4:30, the manager walked past his desk again. This time she nodded. "Good work today," she said. "Thank you," he replied. The words landed differently than they were meant to. Not as reassurance, as closure. When 5 o'clock came, he waited. Let others pack up first. He shut down his computer and stood moving deliberately. He didn't rush to the elevator. On his way out, he passed the manager's office. The door was open. She was on a call, head tilted slightly, listening. He could hear her say his name, then something about scheduling. She didn't see him. He paused just long enough to register the sound of his name spoken without him present. Then he kept walking. Outside, the light had shifted again. Clouds moved in, dulling the edges of the buildings. He adjusted his bag on his shoulder and headed toward the station. The structure of the day had held. The rules had been applied. Nothing dramatic had happened, but authority had been exercised, quietly, in a way that left no record beyond memory and posture. By the time he reached the platform, he already knew the margin he was operating within had narrowed. He stood behind the yellow line and waited for the train. The train was crowded, but manageable. He stood near the door, one hand gripping the pole, the other resting against his bag. At each stop, people pushed in and out with practiced impatience. He stayed where he was, feet planted, eyes forward. At home, the evening followed its usual order. Dinner reheated. A brief conversation about school. A reminder about brushing teeth. The day passed without comment, but it didn't release him. The next morning, the bus arrived earlier than expected. The boy climbed on without looking back this time. The father watched it pull away, then checked his watch. He had room, enough to arrive on time without rushing. He did. By mid-morning, the office had filled. The manager moved through the space with the same controlled pace. She stopped at his desk again, but this time she didn't lower her voice. "Can you step away for a moment?" she asked. There was nothing in her tone to suggest urgency. People nearby looked up anyway. He stood and followed her toward the center aisle. She stopped beside the long table, not in a room, not behind a door. Just open enough. "I noticed you were late again yesterday," she said. "I wasn't," he replied. The words came out evenly. "I clocked in on time." She glanced at her tablet. "You arrived close to the cutoff. That's still an issue." A pause settled between them. He could feel it stretch. "I've been adjusting my mornings," he said. "I've been meeting expectations." She looked at him then, really looked. Her expression didn't harden. It didn't soften either. "This isn't about effort," she said. "It's about standards." A few people shifted in their seats. Someone cleared their throat. He nodded once. Understood. She continued, voice still steady. "I need to be clear. If this continues, it will affect your role here." The words were not loud. They didn't need to be. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He stood there, hands at his sides, shoulders square. He let the statement sit where she placed it. She waited a moment, as if expecting something more. When it didn't come, she made another note on her tablet. "Get back to work," she said. He returned to his desk, sat down, opened his file. The cursor blinked at him, waiting. Around him, the office resumed its motion. Keyboards clicked. Phones buzzed. Conversations restarted in fragments. He worked through the afternoon without pause. He didn't check the time. He didn't look up when the manager passed again. Near the end of the day, an email arrived. A meeting request. Subject line, neutral. Scheduled for the following morning. One-on-one. He accepted it without comment. When he left the building that evening, the sky was already dark. The streetlights reflected off wet pavement. He walked slower than usual, letting people pass him. At home, his son met him at the door. "Did you forget?" the boy asked. "The for what?" the father said, setting his bag down. "Library day," the boy said. "You said you wouldn't forget." The father paused. He looked at the bag, then at the boy. "I forgot," he said. The boy nodded once. Not upset, just noting it. "Okay," he said. They ate dinner quietly. Later, as the father tucked his son into bed, the boy spoke again, eyes already half closed. "Sometimes," he said, "you do everything right and people still get mad." The father didn't answer. He stayed there a moment longer than usual, then turned off the light. In the living room, he opened his laptop. He reread the meeting request. He opened a blank document and stared at it. The exchange at work had been brief, clean, public, and it had closed something. He saved the blank document without typing a word. The meeting took place in a small room with a glass wall, the kind meant to suggest transparency while keeping sound contained. He arrived early and sat in the chair closest to the door, set his bag at his feet, folded his hands in his lap. The manager came in on time. She closed the door gently and took the seat across from him. She placed her tablet on the table and aligned it with the edge, as if that mattered. "This won't take long," she said. He nodded. She spoke about performance first, about reliability, about how teams depended on predictability. Her tone was neutral, familiar, the language of process. He listened without interruption. Then she shifted. "Given recent patterns," she said, "we're making a temporary adjustment." She slid a printed page across the table. He didn't touch it right away. "This will move you to a later shift," she continued. "It gives you time to address personal matters without affecting the rest of the team." He looked at the page. The schedule was clear. The hours overlapped with the bus route he relied on, with the pickup window, with the part of the day that held everything together. "It's not a demotion," she added, "and it's not permanent." He nodded once. "When does it start?" "Immediately." He folded the paper and placed it back on the table. "I can't make that schedule." She paused. "This is the option available." He considered the room, the table, the glass wall, the faint reflections behind her. "I won't be able to do my job that way," he said. She watched him carefully. "That's your choice?" He stood, picked up his bag. "I understand," he said. Outside the room, the office moved as usual. No one looked up when he passed. He went to his desk and packed his things. Not everything, just what he needed. The manager didn't follow him out. At home, the afternoon stretched. The boy came back from school early that day, a half day, a notice he had missed. "You're home," the boy said, surprised. "Yes," the father replied. They ate together. Something simple. The boy talked about a story they'd read in class, about a character who had to leave a place he liked. "Did he want to go?" the boy asked. "No," the father said. "Did he have to?" "Yes." The boy thought about that. That's not fair. The father washed the dishes while the boy did homework. The faucet squeaked again. He tightened it this time, just enough. That evening, the father filled out forms. He called a number and waited on hold. He checked a calendar and crossed out a line. He didn't rush. The next morning, he didn't go to the office. He walked his son to school instead. They took their time. The boy kicked a stone along the sidewalk, then stopped and picked it up. "Can I keep this?" he asked. "Yes," the father said. After school, the boy waited at the library while the father sat nearby, filling out another form. The room was quiet. Pages turned. Chairs scraped softly. At home, a message arrived from work. Brief. A confirmation. The schedule change stood. He didn't reply. Days passed with small adjustments. A different route. A different rhythm. The father moved through them carefully. The boy noticed, but didn't ask much. One evening, as they sat on the couch, the boy looked up from his book. "Are you in trouble?" he asked. "No," the father said. "Then why are things different?" The father considered this. "Because sometimes staying costs more than leaving." The boy nodded, accepting it without weighing it. Later that night, the father laid out his clothes for the morning, not for work, for something else. He placed his badge on the table and left it there. In the quiet, he listened to the building settle. Pipes clicked. A door closed somewhere down the hall. The consequences were not loud. They didn't arrive all at once. They spread through hours and schedules, and the way mornings began. He turned off the light. Something had ended. Something else was waiting. He woke before the alarm. Not because he needed to, but because his body had not learned the new shape of the day yet. The room was still dark. The air felt cooler than usual. He lay there for a moment, listening to the building wake up around him. In the kitchen, he made coffee and didn't drink it right away. He stood at the counter, hands resting on the edge, staring at the wall where a calendar hung. Several dates were crossed out. The rest were blank. He woke his son gently. The boy sat up and rubbed his eyes. "Is it a school day?" he asked. "Yes," the father said. "Are you coming with me again?" "Yes," the boy smiled briefly, then rolled out of bed. They walked together, slower than they used to. The father noticed things he hadn't before. A broken fence panel, a new sign taped to a light pole, the way one shop opened earlier than the others. The boy talked about nothing in particular. The sound of his voice filled the space that had been empty before. After dropping him off, the father didn't rush anywhere. He stood across the street for a moment, watching children file through the doors. Then he turned and walked the other way. At home, he sat at the table and opened his laptop. He read the message from work again. No new information, just confirmation. He drafted a response, deleted it, drafted another, deleted that too. Instead, he opened a document and began listing facts, dates, times, policies referenced. Conversations remembered as clearly as he could manage. He wrote without emotion. Just record. When he finished, he read through it once. He didn't feel relief, only a steady sense of alignment, as if something had finally settled into place. In the afternoon, he received a call. The number was unfamiliar. "This is Human Resources," the voice said. "We received your request for clarification." "I didn't submit one," he replied. There was a pause. "Your manager forwarded a note," the voice said. "We're following up." "I see," he said. They spoke briefly. The questions were neutral. The answers were factual. The call ended without resolution. That evening, the boy sat at the table drawing while the father cooked. The sound of the pencil moving across paper was steady. "Do you like your job?" the boy asked, without looking up. The father considered the question. "I liked being able to take care of things." The boy nodded, as if that was enough. After dinner, the father sorted through papers. He separated what he needed from what he didn't. He placed the badge back into his bag, then took it out again, set it on the table. Later, lying in bed, he thought about the manager, not with anger. With distance, he saw her as part of a structure that rewarded certainty over context. He understood that now. In the morning, he sent a single email. Brief, direct. He requested a formal review of the schedule change and its impact. He attached the document he had prepared. He didn't feel brave. He felt tired, but it was the kind of tired that came after a decision, not before one. The day moved forward. By afternoon, a reply arrived. A meeting scheduled. Higher level. Different room. He closed the laptop and went to pick up his son. As they walked home, the boy kicked the same stone he had kept in his pocket the day before. It bounced ahead of them, then skidded to a stop. "You don't look worried," the boy said. "I am," the father replied. "Oh," the boy said, "you just don't look like it." The father nodded. He hadn't realized that was true until the boy said it. That night, he ironed a shirt he hadn't worn in a long time. Not because it mattered, but because it helped him move through the evening without thinking too much. He placed the shirt over the back of a chair and turned off the light. The next step would cost him something. He could feel that now. Not sharply, just clearly. And still, he slept. The building was quieter on the upper floors. The carpet absorbed sound. The lights were softer, indirect. He arrived 10 minutes early and waited outside the room, standing rather than sitting. When the door opened, a woman he hadn't met before stepped out and nodded at him. "You can come in," she said. The room was larger than the others. No glass walls, just a table, 4 chairs, a window that looked out over the street below. The manager was already there, seated with her tablet in front of her. She looked up when he entered. Her expression changed slightly. Not defensive, just alert. He took the chair across from her. The woman from Human Resources introduced herself and explained the purpose of the meeting. The language was careful, balanced. She asked him to describe what had happened. He did, slowly, without emphasis. He spoke about the schedule, about the bus, about the pickup window, about the warnings given publicly. He didn't accuse. He didn't frame it as unfair. He stated what had occurred and how it affected his ability to do the job. When he finished, the room stayed quiet. The manager responded next. She spoke about consistency, about expectations, about how accommodations, once made visible, created complications. She referred to policy. She did not mention the child. The human resources representative listened, took notes, asked clarifying questions. She asked the manager whether alternative solutions had been considered. The manager paused. Only briefly. We discussed options, she said. This was the most practical. The representative nodded. She turned to him again. If the schedule adjustment remains, she asked, are you able to continue in your role? He didn't answer right away. He looked at the table, at the grain in the wood, at a small scratch near the edge. No, he said. The word landed without weight. Just fact. The representative folded her hands. Then we need to discuss next steps. They did. The options were laid out clearly. A leave. A transfer that didn't exist yet. A resignation with notice. Each one carried its own cost. None preserved the structure he needed. The manager watched him while the options were explained. For the first time, there was uncertainty in her posture. Not regret. Recognition. He chose the last option. I'll submit notice, he said. Effective at the end of the week. The human resources representative nodded. We'll document that. The manager spoke then. If you'd given me more context. He looked at her. Not sharply, just fully. I did, he said. The sentence ended there. The meeting concluded without ceremony. Handshakes were offered. He took them. The manager's grip was firmer than before. At his desk, he worked through the rest of the day. He closed files, labeled folders, wrote instructions for tasks no one had asked him to explain before. A few coworkers stopped by. One asked quietly if he was leaving. He nodded. That's rough, the coworker said. It's fine, he replied. On his last day he arrived early. Earlier than necessary. He wanted to leave without interruption. He cleared the desk completely this time, wiped the surface with a paper towel, returned the chair to its place. The manager passed once. She stopped. I didn't mean to put you in a position like that, she said. He considered this. I know. She nodded, as if relieved by the answer. He turned in his badge at the security desk. The guard looked at him, then at the badge. Good luck, the guard said. Thank you, he replied. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, just open. At home, the boy was already there. A note from school explained the early dismissal. He had missed it again. He folded the note and set it aside. You're home early, the boy said. Yes, he said. Are you working tomorrow? No, he said. The boy thought about that. Are you coming to pick up now? Yes. That evening, they ate together. The boy talked about a project due next week. The father listened, asked questions. The future arranged itself in smaller units. Later, as he tucked the boy in the bed, the boy looked up at him. Did they fire you? He asked. No, the father said. Did you quit? Yes. The boy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Okay. That was all. The father turned off the light and closed the door. In the living room, the table was clear. No badge, no laptop open, just the sound of the city outside. Standing still had cost him his job, but something else had stopped costing him more. The mornings changed first. There was no alarm set for a specific train, no calculation done before his feet touched the floor. He still woke early, but the urgency had gone. The apartment filled with a slower kind of movement. Coffee brewed longer. The toast burned once because he wasn't watching it closely. His son noticed. You're not rushing, the boy said one morning, sitting at the table with his backpack already on. No, the father said. I don't need to. They left the apartment together. Not because they had to, but because they could. The stairwell echoed the same way it always had. The street outside looked unchanged. At the school gate, the boy stopped. You'll be here later? He asked. Yes. The boy nodded and went inside without looking back. The father stood across the street again, but this time he didn't wait for anything. He turned and walked home. The days filled themselves in pieces. He updated a resume. Sent it out carefully, one place at a time. He read postings without urgency, paying attention to details he had ignored before. Hours. Flexibility. The way companies described people instead of roles. Some afternoons, nothing happened at all. At the office, his desk was already reassigned. Someone else used the chair he had adjusted for years. The manager noticed the absence most in meetings. There was a space at the table that stayed empty longer than necessary. She didn't comment on it. She just spoke around it. Once, she corrected someone else publicly. The tone was the same. The room responded the same way. But afterward, she paused, as if checking something that wasn't written down. At home, the boy adapted quickly. He didn't ask about money. He didn't ask about titles. He asked about pickup times and dinner plans. One evening, as they walked back from the library, the boy stopped near the corner where the traffic light took longer to change. "You're always here now," he said. "Yes," the father replied. The boy looked up at him. "That's better." The light changed. They crossed. Weeks passed. An interview came and went. Then another. One ended with a polite email. One ended with nothing at all. Then one afternoon, a call came while he was waiting outside the school. The voice on the line was informal. Direct. The role wasn't senior. The pay wasn't higher. The hours were fixed, but predictable. "I need to pick up my son," he said, "every day." There was a pause. "That won't be a problem," the voice said. He accepted without hesitation. The first day at the new job, he arrived on time. Not early, not late, just when he was supposed to. No one commented. The work was quieter, less visible. He did it well. At pickup, the boys spotted him immediately. "You're working again," the boy said, not as a question. "Yes." "Same time tomorrow?" "Yes." The boy smiled and adjusted his backpack. That night, the father placed his new badge on the table. Different color, lighter weight. He didn't clip it on right away. He left it there while they ate. After dinner, the boy cleared his plate and carried it to the sink. "Can I help wash?" he asked. "Yes," the father said. They stood side by side. The faucet didn't squeak anymore. He had fixed it properly this time. Later, when the apartment was quiet again, the father sat at the table alone. The badge was still there. He picked it up, turned it over once, then clipped it to his bag. Outside, the city moved the way it always had. Buses arrived and left. Offices lit up and went dark. Somewhere across town, a desk stayed empty. Not marked. Not explained. Just unused. In the morning, he would walk his son to school again. And when the boy turned at the door, he would already be there.